Let's talk about reworking plots. I just ran into this issue where in the current manuscript that I'm working on, I was having a lot of resistance to writing it. I couldn't really figure out why for a couple of days. And then finally I realized I didn't like my plot. I thought my plot was stupid. It was slow and boring and going to be full of filler. And I thought to myself, well, this is dumb. I don't even want to write this. So what did I do? I mean, maybe you found yourself in this kind of circumstance before. Maybe you've been in this situation where you have just a lot of resistance to your story and you don't know why. And it eventually comes out that it's the plot. That's what's wrong. So how do you fix it? Well, I know what I did, and so I'm going to share that with you, and hopefully you can find some value in that for yourself. First, I think it's important to understand that ideas are not precious. Ideas are the cheapest and easiest thing about the whole creative process. In fact, ideas are practically worthless. They don't feel worthless. Understand me. They feel like they are incredibly valuable. But the reality is that whatever good idea you have right now, there's probably a better one. You probably have a better idea waiting in the wings. The current idea you have, no matter how much you love it, is probably not even the best version of itself. There's this really interesting exercise that has been studied a bunch. It's sort of a phenomenon. And they've done scientific studies on this. If you sit down and you tell somebody, write down your best idea, and they write down an idea, and it is their best idea, and then you say, stand up and walk around the room, come back and write me 10 better ideas or better versions of this idea. Every single time they write a better version of that idea. Even though that idea was the best, it was the best idea. When they have a moment to think, a moment to ponder, and when they iterate on the idea, they get a better idea. All of this to say, we need not be so attached as creatives to our ideas. In fact, one of the marks of an amateur is that they cannot let go of their ideas. They become so fixated on the idea, on crafting the perfect thing, that they never iterate, and so they never grow beyond the amateur stage. The willingness to shift and change and mold ideas into something better, to improve over time, is a hallmark of a professional. So don't be so attached to your ideas that you can't give them up. And so, taking my own advice, the first thing that I did is I threw out my ideas. I said, originally I had an idea for book 2 in the series and book 3 in the series, but if I stick with these ideas, it's going to be boring. And I don't want it to be boring. And eventually I realized that if I shifted book 3 into book 2, combining the two storylines, combining the two plots, it would be way better. And so I did. And that brings us to the second thing that you really want to be careful of. You don't want to be afraid of blowing up everything. Now, before the FBI comes and knocks on my door, I'm talking about blowing up plots. But this is a fantasy world. This is a made-up thing. You don't have to be afraid of blowing everything up in that world. I know I had a little bit of anxiety around the idea of moving book 3 into book 2, smashing the two plots together, and just having a rip-roaring good time with these two combined plots. And I thought to myself, but what am I going to do in book 3? I have all of this blank space now. Guess what? Ideas are cheap. Guess what? Ideas are the easy part. Guess what? I'll come up with some more ideas. In fact, I already have more ideas because as I'm thinking about this new and improved plot, all of a sudden, there's all of this stuff that's naturally flowing out of it, right? That naturally follows. And that is exactly where you want to be. You want to be excited about your story. You want to be energized about it. You don't want to be feeling that resistance. You want to be moving forward. That momentum is so incredibly important when you write. So don't be afraid of blowing things up because the ideas are cheap. You're going to have more of them. And in fact, you're going to have better ideas. Your 10th idea is better than your first idea. Your 100th idea is even better than that. And that's just how it goes. So you don't have to worry that by blowing things up mid-story, you're going to somehow ruin everything. In fact, the more tightly you control the plot, trying to force it into the position you want, the less natural it's going to feel to the reader. People can tell when things are contrived. And so if your plot isn't flowing naturally, don't be afraid to just blow it up, to just shift directions, to just change something. You originally were going to have the villain escape, kill him halfway through. Introduce a new villain that has been behind them the whole time, who is even scarier, who is even bigger, who is even more nefarious. Maybe it's your main character's best friend. Maybe the true villain has been standing next to them the entire time. This is the thing. It's a fantasy world. You can do whatever you want. Just don't be afraid of exploring new territory, of blowing things up. And that brings us to the third thing. Trust yourself. You can do this. You're a good writer. And you can work your way through your plot problems. You're going to make it. You're going to finish this book. It's going to be fantastic. In fact, it's going to be even better than it was because you're not going to be precious with your ideas. You're not going to be afraid of blowing things up because you're a good writer. And even if you aren't as good as you want to be, you're getting there. You're on that journey. And eventually, you're going to be such a good writer that nobody will ever doubt you. Until then, we do have to actively fight against our doubt. We have to actively fight to trust ourselves. We have to actively reject imposter syndrome. And we have to push through, acting on the new ideas that we have. We can't just let our fear of not being able to do something stop us. So trust yourself. I get that sometimes it's easier said than done, but the next time you're having doubts, just come and watch this video. Remember, you're going to have great ideas, and you can blow everything up and create a fantastic story. Just trust yourself, trust the process, and do the work.